Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Abington Heights School Board meeting for Wednesday, October 2nd. Would everyone please rise and pledge the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. May we have a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Mr. Abdallah.
Here.
Mr. Azar.
Here.
Ms. Henderson.
Here.
Ms. Hillebrand.
Here.
Ms. Karam.
Here.
Mr. Moran.
Here.
Mr. Robeson.
Here.
Ms. Tierney.
Here.
And Mr. Acker.
Here.
Welcome, everyone.
Can I please have a motion? Can I please have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Azar.
Yes.
Ms. Henderson.
Yes.
Ms. Hillebrand.
Yes.
Ms. Karam.
Yes.
Mr. Moran.
Yes.
Mr. Robeson.
Yes.
Ms. Tierney.
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah.
Yes.
And Mr. Acker.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you very much. Okay, normally at this point, we would ask for public comment, but I understand we have some superstars that are going to talk to us tonight, so perhaps we should turn the podium over to them.
I defer to Dr. Vitale.
Get used to it.
I was going to say, I'm not superintendent yet. So I would like to welcome the middle school. Before we welcome them, the middle school really focused heavily on building community and creating a more positive climate within the school. And they came to kind of us with a bunch of, Mrs. Burrell came to us with an idea of one book, one school. And we immediately fell in love with it. And the reality is that we could not make it happen without AEIOU, with the Kuiper grant, and without also the Dull Bear grant. So what we're going to present truly is a community effort to make this happen and make this a success and start the middle school off on a really positive note. So I'd like to welcome our middle school principal, Mrs. Snyder. You're welcome.
Thank you. You said more than I was going to say. I wasn't really going to say much. I'm just very excited about this initiative. I'm honored to have this group of students here with us tonight and Ms. Burrell. We were practicing this morning, and it was just like the reason we did this was what they're going to talk about, and I was getting chills as they were kind of talking through their experience and their connections, and so I'm just really proud of this initiative, and I'm proud of the kids that are going to be here tonight to speak to you. So I'm going to welcome Ms. Burrell first to give you some more context for the initiative in our school.
Again, Dr. Vitale did kind of steal the thunder here, but I appreciate it. As she said, the goal of this, when the Dull Bear Grant email came out, the annual email that I always wait for, I knew I could choose to do some more PD, which is incredible that we have that opportunity, but I knew I wanted something that would be more memorable and powerful for our students, so that's why I chose to go with One School, One Book. We ended up going with Gordon Corman's novel just because it had a really powerful message about being able to change who you are, become the person that you really want to be, and I think that middle school students can really identify with that. So the end of the 23-24 school year, we actually kicked off, we introduced this to the faculty. There was kind of a creative skit that was created actually using AI. If you remember, there was a whole survey that went out about AI, and one of our creative committee members used it to create this kind of silly, cheesy skit to really kind of engage our faculty and staff at the middle school. One of the really awesome things that we did and we carried over with the students was after the skit, all of our faculty members had an opportunity to sign this gigantic banner that's now hanging and sometimes ends up on the floor in the cafeteria. We have to find some better adhesive, so if anyone knows of any. Everyone signed it. Our students had an opportunity to sign it after we did the kickoff with them, and it's just a really awesome show of unity for our building. During the first week of school, we had our students gathered in the auditorium by grade level, and they got to watch their teachers and administrators perform that very same skit that the faculty and staff got to watch, and this was really our official kickoff for Restart. And now I have Sarah. She's going to do an incredible summary.
Hello, my name is Sarah Horsley, and I am currently an 8 white. The book Restart by Gordon Corman is testing nature versus nurture, following the life of Chase, the bully of his school, after he lost his memory from amnesia. Due to his loss of memory, he became an overall better person, even becoming friends with the people he once bullied, showing that no matter what type of person you are able to change and become a better version of yourself.
Hello, my name is Charlie Curtin. I am part of 7th Blue. Every student and staff member at AHMS received their own copy of the book Restart. Books were wrapped up and set to deliver during each Comet Express period. In my period, each book was delivered in a present format, and we had to sit on the edge of our seats until September 9th when the books were unwrapped.
Hi, my name is Gabby Yagison, and I'm an 8 white. Every day, everyone at AHMS reads the same chapters in Restart and has the opportunity to answer a trivia question with a chance to win a prize. Our TV studio does a great job ensuring everyone knows about our winners. The trivia questions were really helpful because they really helped stand out important aspects of the book, and then I remembered them.
This is an example of
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Trivia. Welcome to Restart Trivia Blast. Here's how it works. We'll be throwing questions your way about the book, so be ready to recall those key details and plot points. From Chase's personal growth to the dynamics of his relationships and the challenges that he faces, everything is fair game. When you think you know the answer, write the answer, your name, your teacher's name on the provided entry slip, and place it in the decorated container on the blocks. A winner for each question will be announced, and they will be rewarded a fabulous prize. Here's question 1, taken from chapters 1 and 2. What leads Dr. Cooperman to believe that Chase's memory isn't gone? It is just his ability to access it that is gone. Good luck. See you tomorrow.
Hello, my name is Nick Rozecki, and I'm in 5 Blue. The reason the teachers do the Would You Rather is so that students could choose their way. In Restart, Chase got amnesia. Before, Chase was a bully. Now he is a pretty nice guy and becoming friends with some of the people he has bullied. I'd like to thank Mrs. Burrell and Mrs. Snyder for inviting me.
Hello, my name is Egon Smith, and I am in 6 Blue. This year, the students of AHMS received the book Restart. In Restart, the main character, Chase, gets amnesia and deals with the challenges of his new life. The students of middle school were given an assignment to write or draw an important quote or scene. I used the quote, how to clean your tricycle, and drew a picture of the scene. I chose that quote because of its humor and how Chase made a friend out of an old person he bullied.
Lose your memory, find your life. Good evening. My name is Anthony Picotti. I'd like to thank Ms. Burrell and the middle school staff for inviting me to speak about Restart. In 5th grade, I had entered the middle school, and I didn't understand how to fit in. I had struggled and made poor choices, and I finished the year on a decent note. In 6th grade, Mr. Evans had entered the middle school, and I had high hopes for the school year. Around December, I hit the lowest point of my life, and I had struggled with friends. I tried being better, but I had struggled with making bad choices. I left 6th grade early without intentions of returning and thought of doing CCA. In chapter 29, Chase is in court for theft, and he says something that I could connect a lot with. It was, "I'm sorry, Your Honor, but I cannot make that guarantee. I feel different. I have no promise that I have no urge to do the things I used to do, but the person who stole the medal was once inside of me. I can't promise he's gone forever, as I felt like I couldn't change. But this is where my restart was. Seventh grade felt different. The back of the book cover, which I have on the board, has 3 things I connected with. He knows he's Chase, but who is Chase? Some kids are clearly afraid of him. Pretty soon, it's not only a question of who Chase is, it's a question of who he was and who he's going to be. I'm bringing this up because that's what I felt. I knew I was Anthony, but who was Anthony going to be? I knew kids who didn't like me. My question was what I was going to be. In 7th grade, I had a different approach to the school year. I played Abington Junior Comets. I was on the last A team, and I did AH Marching Comets. I had felt different, I had more friends, and my teachers on 7 White were amazing. By Christmas time, I didn't make any poor choices. I started indoor track and field, and I also did outdoor track and field and had a lot of success in it. I finished 7th grade as my best year. I truly understood how Chase felt. Although I didn't get a redo like he did, I was glad I was able to find out who is Anthony and make myself who I wanted to be. How many people ever get a do-over in life? Falling on my head was the best thing that had ever happened to me is the last line in chapter 29. And I felt like 7th grade was my do-over. I loved my teachers. I built myself up. I had a few friend groups that I could connect with. LCBC and my faith as a Christian had really helped me throughout 7th grade. In 8th grade, started with a lot of positivity, was looking forward to meet with my teachers, started junior high football, and I pole vaulted over the summer. To close, I'd like to share the last 4 lines in this book. It proves anything is possible. Kimmy and me, a YouTube sensation, even Chase Ambrose turning out to be a nice guy. Redemption is possible. Thank you.
I think his story kind of speaks for the impact that this project had on students. We're not done yet, though. On October 4th, we have a whole host of guest readers coming from our local celebrities like Dr. Vitale and Dr. Schaefer, newscasters, local college athletes, dance instructors. So we're excited for those guests to come and read the final 2 chapters of the novel to students during Comet Express. And I see Mr. Miravelli over here. He has a drone, and he's going to help us to get a whole school photo with the students with their books. So we're excited for that. And the One School, One Book Committee plans to carry out engaging activities with students and staff to create community throughout the rest of the school year. So thank you for supporting this. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
And I would just like it noted that Mrs. Burrell spent a significant amount of time planning this and making it happen. And in one of our initial planning meetings, she said she wanted to get celebrities to read. And I said, I would be delighted to read. And she's like, I meant like real celebrities. So I'm really excited that I've been chosen 3 times on Friday to read. So maybe I am quasi-celebrity.
Ladies, that was awesome. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. You guys are just great.
Do you want Michelle to go right into it?
I'm just starting.
Look at you, ready to go.
Is that Michelle's
Okay.
Michelle?
Uh,
I was told to get the slide deck ready.
Is there any public comment? All right. Being none, Mr. Acker, at this time, I'd like to introduce Ms. Snyder, who will be, giving us a overview of the middle school goals and data, and that'd be followed by Dr. Tioni, who will do the same for the high school.
So I'm going to start here with ELA. We'll share our scores, and then I'm going to talk specifically more about the goals for the year and what we're doing to move ourselves forward. The first couple slides are our PSSA scores, so this is grades 5 and 6. The scores were not what we expected. Grades 7 and 8. And then our cohort data. So this data is a lot, the data that Mr. Evans, Mr. Handy, and I spent a lot of time talking about over the summer. So looking across vertically for students, so how they're performing as they're moving up through the grades. It's one thing to look 8th grade to 8th grade, but also looking at the cohort of kids as they're moving up through the middle school. This is where we had a lot of conversations around what does this look like longitudinally. So these scores, as I said, were not what we expected in the summer when we received them. We spent a lot of time as an admin team just at the middle school looking at this data, diving into it, trying to make sense of what's the disconnect that we see. We know our kids are capable, we know our teachers are skilled, and so we just had a lot of questions about why does that not seem to be connecting to what we're seeing in these scores. We spent a lot of time looking at the anchors with PSSAs, the writing that's required on the PSSA, the test design, so how are those things scored? What's the weight of those things on the PSSA? When we're looking at that, some of our biggest takeaways when we looked at that data was the text-dependent analysis, which is the written portion of the ELA test, and then also conventions of English and key idea and details. So the text-dependent analysis, that's when students are asked to read something, there's a prompt, and then they have to respond to that prompt. It is 25% of the test. We were kind of shocked about the scores. We know that our students write, we know that our teachers teach writing, so we were, again, like shocked with the disconnect between what we see in the classroom and then what was reflected in our scores. So moving forward, now that we have all this data and this information, we really wanted to focus our goal for the building on writing. Previously, our goal for the building had been increasing the number of students who were proficient or advanced. We've said that we wanted to focus and drill down more onto writing. So we're looking at currently in the school year so far, what does writing look like across all content areas? Just because you're an ELA teacher, you're not solely responsible for writing. We write in all subjects. The rubric that's used for PD, so when they grade the TDA, making sure that teachers are really familiar with what that language is and what actually constitute a 2 from a 3, so how do we get kids kind of over that hump? And then supporting that style of writing, so ensuring that the first time that they see that style of writing is not in April when they take the PSSA. So a couple of things that we've done already is that all of our ELA teachers have given a TDA baseline writing. Our October 14th and 15th professional development time is going to be time for teachers to get familiar with the rubric and then time to score that writing and then decide what are some focus areas that I need to focus in on with my particular class with writing. Our Common Express period is also a time where we're doing differentiated instruction and teachers have a lot of good ideas of how to support writing within that time. And then we're also looking at just focus on tier 1, so like the everyday instruction that's happening across the classrooms. Like I said, what does writing look like in science, social studies? How do those teachers also then support what writing can look like? Support writing so that we're ensuring that our students feel confident and have the skills to perform on the PSSAs come spring 2025. So this is, as I mentioned, this is our goal for ELA. For the middle school this year. We specifically drilled down on focusing on our students increasing their scores with the text-dependent analysis. Just gonna skip her. Do you want me to? Okay.
We could have rearranged the slides.
Okay, I'm gonna switch gears to math.
You can stand next to her.
You wanna come? Okay.
So this will tie in later when I do the other part of the presentation, but this is the literature keystone. Students take the literature keystone after they complete our 9th grade English 9 curriculum. So it is down, but there's a fluctuation between, it's still above other years, so. Not entirely pleased, but not entirely dismayed either.
Okay, I'm gonna switch gears to math now. So same process. Here's our grades 5 and 6 PSSA scores. And our grade 7 and 8 for math PSSAs. And then the same table with the cohort comparison, so looking at that group of kids as they move up through the grades. Again, this was this past summer, something that we spent, myself, Mr. Evans, and Mr. Hanyon spent a lot of time looking at. We noticed that across the board, kids seemed to perform pretty well in their 3rd and 4th grade year, and then slowly decline as they move up through the grades. We had a lot of conversations around why we think that happens. The algebra keystone.
This is high school algebra 1 keystone data again here.
So reflecting on the PSSA part for the middle school, we decreased in grades 5 and 8, and then only small group growth in 6 and 7. The decrease was not the same as ELA, but there was still a minimal growth in math. And like I said, we spent a lot of time doing the same thing with the data dive, looking down into the anchors, looking down into eligible content. So again, like we know our kids are capable and that we have skilled teachers, and so what's not translating to when they get in front of the PSSAs? Is it what they're being asked to do as a test taker? Is it what they're being asked to do as a mathematician? So we had a lot of conversations around what can we do to better support that. So same idea with writing. What can we do to better support math across the grade? I'll show my goal in a second, but we did keep the goal pretty large picture, and we are still looking at increasing the number of students who are proficient or advanced on the math PSSAs. We feel like the number of students that are proficient and advanced currently doesn't really reflect what we see in the classroom in terms of our ability of our students. Some of the things that we're focusing on already, we had OGAP professional learning last year with our teachers, so a framework for teaching like open-ended style questions and then looking at student work and then how do you move kids' thinking using that work and the data you get back from that work. We will continue that work this year. One of the pieces that I asked for with our professional development plan at the middle school was time to do curriculum review, and this is across all content areas, but the goal with that being that have teachers having time to take the curriculum that's board approved, take the programs, and we have a lot of new programs happening at the middle school, take the programs, take OGAP, and take all these pieces and fit them together in a cohesive way. I feel like that has, just from conversations with teachers, that is something that we need to spend a lot of time looking at. And again, like that's just the tier 1 instruction that we're providing every single day. We also have our Common Express period where same thing, we took CDTs this year. Teachers are using eligible content to address some of those gaps that we've seen with our data. Here's our math goal for the year. And as I said before, we decided to keep this goal pretty big picture. We feel like we could do a better job increasing the number of students across the board that are proficient or advanced, focusing on targeted skills and standards, and specifically doing a little bit better job focusing on targeted students that we can continue to push to meet that level of proficiency. Okay. And then our science PSSA for 8th grade. We do fairly well on science. There's a little bit of a drop, but nothing too alarming in my opinion. We have a new program in science, so there's a new program K-5 and then a new program 6 through 8. So same thing that I just mentioned, making sure in that PD time this year that teachers have time to work, and a new curriculum that was adopted. building in that professional development time to do that curriculum review. So making sure that they're confident and comfortable with their curriculum and their program, how do those things align when they're for just daily instruction. Grade 5 will complete science in the spring this year, so that's something else that's coming to the middle school. And then that will also, I think, help to give us some data, because it's a little bit more closely aligned, grade 5 and 8, of how they perform in science. And then, as I mentioned in the beginning with the ELA part, looking at content-specific writing. So again, with science, we do really well in science PSSA, but just focusing a little bit more on what does the writing piece look like for our students in science.
So I know it feels disjointed that you're seeing middle school data and then there's like keystones popping in, but I think it's important to consider that everything that the middle school does sets the high school kids up for success. So when I was looking at the slide deck, I didn't want to separate it, because even though you may see some discrepancies in the data that they're presenting and maybe some drops in data, you then see in high school that they cover those gaps, and it's because of the great foundational work that they do in the middle school that when we test in the Keystone, which is a different test, still a state test, but when they're testing in 9th grade, you know, half the kids take the Algebra 1 Keystone in 8th grade, the other half take it in high school in 9th grade, and then all of our 9th graders take literature. You see them cover and reach those achievement goals. So yes, they're separate and they're like disjointed, but they're together, right? So they're using the PSSA data to help drive that instruction so that when the kids do get to high school, they're able to achieve. And I think that's why I left them where they were, because it's important to consider all of the data points together and not just stand alone, like this is PSSA and this is Keystone. So these are the biology, you know, they assess biology. We take it in 10th grade here at Abington Heights. And again, we do really well in science. So that's why it kind of feels like middle school, high school, middle school, high school, so. Are you done? Perfect. Want to stay? All right, so here are the numbers of students. I shouldn't say number of students, the number of tests. So you'll find several students will take multiple tests. So the number of tests administered, you know, is in that column there. It grew a lot in 22-23. I think where we are now, that's probably a more stable number. That's probably what we're going to continue to see there. Our passing rate is outstanding. When I opened the faculty meeting this year for the school year, I was incredibly impressed. You have to have a score of 3, 4, or 5 to be considered passing. The number of students that are receiving 1 or 2 is obviously marginal, and 1 is very small. So our students do really well. Our teachers do a really nice job of preparing them to be successful. So then it's going to break them down by content areas. So these are the 4 advanced placement courses that we offer at the high school within the English discipline. Seminar and research was a new AP add that we added in 22-23. That's why those first 4 columns are blank. These are the 5 AP tests that we offer in the mathematics discipline. These are our science AP scores. Social sciences, like your social studies. We had one student, we don't offer that class, but we had a student sit and take that exam. That's why U.S. government is blacked out like that. In world language. So not every year do we have students that have we have enough interest in the AP languages to run the courses, so that's why you see. So one of our academic goals last year was to reduce failing grades on the report cards. So this is longitudinal data related to, you know, the last 2 years that I've really kind of been looking at it. I've noticed that, you know, in core classes, students were receiving failing grades. And we run, because of athletics, just because of us running reports, we probably every other week, maybe bi-monthly, we run reports of students that are failing 2 or more classes. And, you know, it's alarming when you see kids struggling. So we started to look more closely at it, and we set a goal that we were going to try to reduce that. So we were very successful in meeting that. That last column is, you know, it's still failing quarter grades in those content areas, but you can see that it's reduced greatly. So the way that we tackled it is we set up automated emails from Infinite Campus to just automatically email parents for whether they were missing an assignment or if they weren't meeting with success, like if their grade wasn't over 65. Teachers started to make inroads with like the students and their families. We really tried to leverage period 9. We're going to continue to expand on this even more. We saw great success with it, but we think we could do it better. So we're going to dial down within the department setting now, talking about students, doing more warm handoffs from year to year within the content. We think it's important that, you know, if a student was successful with you, like share that secret with their future teacher so that they know how to be successful, build stronger connections. So we're going to be keeping the same goal because obviously we still have work to do. There's still kids that aren't meeting with success in the high school, so we want to work to put safety nets in for all of them. Attendance in high school, sometimes, you know, they start to drive, they get a little bit flexible with their time. So we really try to encourage kids to be in class and be in school and not miss a lot of time. So we put some rewards in place. Last year, we made our goal, we're good there, but you know, it was fun. Like we used to hand out ice cream rewards. We're going to keep all of those same things. So our reflection on our goal last year is we're proud of the work that we did, but we don't believe this needs to still be an area of focus for us. So we will be switching that goal. In its place, we're going to go back to targeting like another layer of increasing interventions, improving teacher-student connections, and fostering improved student outcomes through our work with period 9. I'm sure those of you that have students in the high school, you got all of my messaging about how we're not releasing any kids for period 9 anymore. We're locking it down. You need to be here. You need to network with your teachers. You need to access your teachers, your guidance counselor, form study groups. Tell us what study hall you want to be in so that you can make those connections. Those social interactions are sometimes getting missed now within the social setting because of the digital connections that we make with people. So we're really trying, it might feel a little contrived to a teenager, but there's good, you know, there's good reasoning behind it. So we are really trying to hold a lot of club meetings, expose kids to a lot of different things, make connections with teachers. And we used our first data day. I kind of pulled the curtain back for the teachers to see what kind of data they need to be looking at and the data that we've already been looking at as an admin and guidance counselor department, and then really getting them to start to own that data and use that data to make connections with kids. So all of that is going to be happening in period 9, and that's our focus for our second goal moving forward. Our last goal is a sense of belongingness. We did not meet that goal. You know, you could throw darts at a wall why we didn't meet that goal. Some people like to say that we gave the climate survey on the hottest week of the school year and we don't have air conditioning. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. So we didn't meet, so we're not focused on it. We're gonna pay more attention to those things. We're trying to do it through open communication. Sometimes I feel like I communicate too much. Some people say it's just the right amount, but we're really trying to have an open door, bring the parents in, bring the teachers in, a lot of phone calls, we have a lot of visibility. The teachers are out in the hallways. We're really trying to help stakeholders trust our vision and know that we have the best interests of the students. We launched PBIS this year, which is not something that you typically see in a lot of high schools. It still feels a little bit hokey to some kids, but we're just gonna keep pushing through and doing it. We're increasing school spirit. I've sent a couple messages about wearing your comic gear on Fridays. Student council has brought up a lot of great ideas that they're going to do to try to rally the troops. But, you know, I want school to feel like a place where, you know, they just love coming. And if you can get them in the seat, you can get them to learn. So those are the goals that the high school has for this year, and we appreciate everything that you do to support all of our initiatives and everything that, you know, we kind of put forward.
Mrs. Theoni, thank you very much. Mrs. Snyder, thank you as well. Comments or questions?
Okay. I was just wondering if it's possible for us to see the data benchmarked against other schools that we would consider, performing at the same level as us. It's interesting to see ups and downs or whatever, but I think benchmarking against other schools will allow us to see the impact of larger social events and things like that as well, and then also to know, are we performing where we need to be?
I think you're about the fourth board member that's asked for that same thing.
You can tell it's just not out.
So, yes. Part of the struggles we have with this state data is that it doesn't get released until October or November. So we get this raw data file in June, and we disaggregate it and pull all the data together kind of ourselves, and then building principals look at it, but we don't have that comparison data. I look every other day, it's still not posted. So once we get it, we will kind of do a new board presentation of just side by side, so you can see where we compare statewide, and then we can certainly pull out other districts that mirror us with proficiency ratings, just to see. I know Dr. Schaefer has spent a significant amount of time kind of doing a deep dive in like percentile ratings over the years, so we also have that as well, but it's just not available, and it is incredibly frustrating.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. There's a couple of things that I thought about after the elementary, and it carries over to this. The presentation was good, and, the review of the goals is good, and also, what we're going to focus on is good. And it's very much, I think, things that we control, which makes sense, right, naturally. But if we thought broader to other factors that could play a role in impacts on assessment scores, for example, the number of assessments that students take. Is there assessment fatigue? We're talking Keystones, PSSAs, normal assessments, right? And I know some of these things are out of our control, but that doesn't mean that they're not factors. So have we looked at any non-content, curriculum, none of those factors, or even PD, but more so, are we assessing our students too much? At some point, is there a saturation point where there's too much assessment going on? Because I did take a non-scientific survey of a small population of students, and I got the sense that there's a perception that some assessments are more important than others. So if you can't be 100% at all of them, you might as well pick one or two. Now, I don't know if that's true across the board, but it does confirm what I thought, that maybe some of the assessments is just too much. On top of that, some of the things that we do control, we're trying to improve, which is good, but are we doing too much at the same time, on top of the assessment fatigue? So are we having change fatigue? Maybe the answer is no. But I didn't hear anything non-content, like environmental factors, because there's a lot that goes into these things. And some of them are, some of the change percentage was non-statistically significant, right? But even still, in the spirit of trying to improve, have we looked at some of those non-content, non-curriculum, non-PD factors, such as test fatigue?
I honestly have not considered assessment fatigue when we talk about this. I know we talk about it all the time, that we should not be giving assessments unless we have a purpose with it. So if you're not going to do anything with the data, just collecting grades in a grade book is useless. And I know that we're having a lot of those kind of conversations, that there has to be a purpose to the assessment, and let's be really intentional. I know Mrs. Snyder is kind of leading the charge at the middle school. I know Mrs. Tioni has kind of revamped how midterms and finals are given, and is really supporting more project-based learning than just an actual kind of like Scantron-esque bubble sheet. So those are things that we're looking at. I don't have hard and fast data to say one way or the other, but it certainly can be a contributing factor. As far as change, yeah, I mean, so there are definitely changes. Our hope is that our changes are making us more strategic, more intentional, and more supportive of the classroom teacher, which thus then supports the learner. But we look at all of our PD surveys and the surveys we get from teachers, and we hear that it's one more thing, one more thing, one more thing. And we're having those conversations of not yet. So the best example I can give is that we looked for 2 years for a new universal screener at the elementary level. We decided on one, we're moving forward with it, we purchased it this summer, and in July, the state rolled out a free universal screener that they're recommending. And I said to the elementary principals, no, we're not even considering it. Like, we've trained everybody, we've spent all this time, no. And like, I appreciate that it's free, but no. So I think that as leaders, we're super aware of that, of not piling on one more thing. And everything we're trying to do that seems new or is new, like Link It is a good example for that. It's new, but it's going to make their lives easier once they learn how to navigate it. And I think they're starting to see that. And as an administrative team, I think we're starting to see that as well. So I think we're hyper-focused on just not overwhelming our staff and allowing them that time and that space to kind of process what we're doing and work through it. So all really good kind of feedback for us, and it's things that we're aware of and trying to combat.
And also, you bring up a good point, because I was looking at it from a student perspective, and not that I wasn't thinking about the administrators and teachers, but that's true too. You bring Linked It up, because that will help things become way more efficient and hopefully reduce a lot of admin time. So there's that part of it too. So is there fatigue among and stress and pressure to deliver because we have these presentations, right? And then people start asking questions. I just want to make sure we're looking at it, I don't want to use the word because it was overused recently, but the whole picture, let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I think we're really trying to, of just making sure that we're looking at the whole picture and not just these numbers.
Mrs. Anderson?
I just have a couple things. I have the privilege of living with middle schoolers and high schoolers. So, I'm kind of seeing it from sitting in this seat and listening to the presentations, and just based off of the things that I see and hear every day, and with the girls that I coach at the middle school level. Nobody wants to see test scores drop, but I think there's a lot of things, at play here. I was happy to hear, that we're really addressing what are the gaps, and trying to figure out how to fix those. And a lot of times it comes down to like, what's the why, and some of that, it's hard to tell. I mean, Mr. Robeson mentions environmental factors, and that's one of the things I have written down. We're looking at social and environmental factors, and there's some of the things we have no idea of how much, it's not an excuse, but possibly an explanation. Like if you're looking at the numbers, some of the numbers post-COVID, there is a clear drop. So we'll never know how much that has impacted our kids, that they were home for so long and, virtual for so long. But, I think that coupled with like a mental health epidemic, it's tough, cell phones. If you're looking at data and studies, screen time usage has gone up exponentially post-COVID. The average age in which kids are getting smartphones and social media is, it's younger and younger. So, I think it's hard to say how much of that is impacting their learning. I've heard girls say like, oh, I couldn't concentrate in math because I got a snap or a text, or I wasn't invited to something. And when you're constantly exposed to those things, there's some neuroscience that will say like, they're considered micro traumas. So if you have a kid that's getting something as they're walking into math, they're not available for learning. So it's really hard to tease out, the whys. But, I really like and respect the goals that have been set at both the middle school and high school level. And I do think, when we're looking at those gaps, like Mrs. Snyder said, looking at a curriculum review, I think that's great. We do have new, curriculum, it was like all of the programs put together as new curriculum, but a lot of the programs we have been doing, Wit and Wisdom, it's been done longer in the elementary school than the middle, so I think it's just a matter of, it's a good opportunity to kind of look at what are the opportunities? What are of the gaps and what can we do? Sometimes I get a lot of questions, and I even have this question as a parent, there's not a lot of high school or homework at the middle school level. So is that an opportunity, that we can capture? Are we teaching kids test taking and time management strategies? I think that's huge. You listen to kids coming in, weeks before the PSSA, they're all worked up about it. And, do they have those test taking strategies that will carry over to the high school? So hopefully, once the curriculum review is done, that'll provide some clarity and some direction. But I do think, I look at all the things that we're doing. The one school, one book, I think it's fantastic, and I think there's been a lot of changes that have been made already that I think we kind of have good momentum moving forward. But, I think it does sometimes come down to, what's the why and how can those things be addressed? So, and it's tough because you're not going to get clear answers on some of it. But there are a lot of, environmental and social factors that are in play that were much different, 5 years ago. So.
Mr. Azar?
So I just want to go back to what you said before, Dr. Vitale. You said that you were frustrated that the comparative information was not available. Are you saying it's not available yet for this year, or are you saying it has not been available in the past?
No, it's not available yet for this year. So what happens is, we get this giant Excel spreadsheet, and we take it in June and work through it. And then they upload that into this amazing kind of program called eMetric. And then eMetric.
Who's they? When you say they?
PDE.
Oh,
And
PDE.
The eMetric allows us to pull a lot of the data out of it and
Right.
compare state data.
Right.
But that doesn't go live
Right.
until October or November.
But so then you have it for last year and the year before and the
So
year
we
before?
have it
Okay. So
longitudinally.
then that brings me to my next question.
Yes.
So and there was a lot of data there, right?
A lot of
And
numbers.
I'm a numbers guy, a data guy. That was fast. And I tried to follow it as best as I could. What I saw, and I'm not sure I saw it as clearly as I should have, but what I saw when they went through the numbers today and when they went through the numbers for the elementary schools, there's a clear difference between pre-COVID and post-COVID numbers. There's always variability, and depending on which test and which grade and all. But when I saw the numbers tonight, I saw persistently higher numbers in most of the test scores before 2020 and persistently lower scores after 2020. So if we have the data for the last few years since COVID, how did we compare last year and the year before? If we don't know that, I would like to know that as soon as
We're
possible.
still considerably higher than state averages in all tests.
But I mean, in terms of the trend, we clearly dropped. So I know we're still higher than the state averages.
Right.
But where did we compare to other school districts pre-COVID? And where did we compare last year and the year before? Because that's what matters here. That's what matters to me. It's not, there's clearly
You
a
want to see
drop.
what their trend is versus our trend.
I just want to, Abington Heights, pre-COVID, persistently, I'm sure, ranked at a certain level, not necessarily just to the state average, but to our peer group. We've clearly dropped.
So,
Have our peers dropped?
Just one slide, because I hear what you're saying, but I don't think the pre-COVID numbers
no,
are that much different than the numbers that we're
let me
seeing.
just interject for 1 second.
Yeah.
I'll be sending out an email. There'll be 2 JPEGs on there to look at because the state doesn't provide us this data. So I look at state percentile ranks. When available, they don't put this longitudinally. So last year, I can tell you that for ELA as the entire district, I believe we were the 88th percentile, meaning only 12% of the districts scored higher than us. In mathematics, we were in the 86th percentile, okay, of all the districts, with 14%. Demographics is a tricky question, so what I do is I take a look at our aid ratio, because wealth, whether it is looked at as property taxes or income has some pretty strong correlations with student achievement outcomes. And based on that, throughout the state, our aid ratio follows in the 81st percentile. What you'll see in some of the data that I'll send out is that I took a look at the middle school, 2 areas, 5th and 8th grade ELA only, that had significant drops. And then I showed the state percentile rank. We've actually been higher on our state percentile rank in those areas post-COVID. And what you'll see are fluctuations in test scores, but in some cases lower fluctuations within percentile ranks. So I'm just going to read off some numbers from 2017 to 2023, and this is just for 5th grade ELA. Okay, in 2017 we were in the 64th percentile. 2018 the 62nd percentile. In 19 the 80th percentile. In 21 the 75th percentile. 22 the 80th percentile. In 2023 the 84th percentile. In 8th grade, in 2017, we were in the 93rd percentile. In 2018, the 86th. 2019, 91. 2022, 91. 2023, 90. Right? And there's a couple ways that you look at it. Certainly, it's nice to say that only a few, statistically speaking, are achieving higher. And then the other is to say, you know, what our focus in is what we can control and how are we going to get better tomorrow as compared to today, despite anything else, right? So I can show you some of the data. It says, well, yeah, we dropped at a level commensurate with what the state dropped, okay? I want to be at a place in space where that doesn't matter. You know, I don't care necessarily what they do. What I care about is that our children are growing every single year and that we're responsive to that in the teaching and learning environment. I stopped at the high school earlier in the week when they had their day-to-day, and I sat in the whole presentation, which I'm sure that Dr. Tioni absolutely loved. And at the end, I stood up and I let the faculty know what my philosophy is, and that the board was aware of what my philosophy in education is, because certainly they asked me about it during the interview. And I said, we will get to a point where demographics will not dictate outcomes. And I do not use the word trigger a lot, but one thing that will trigger me is when students are referred to by a level of class that they take. And I use the example that every year I get some phone calls from parents of 10-year-olds asking, my gosh, Chris, I don't think they're going to be able to be in Calc BC. And they're 10, right? And I don't want that to be anyone's perception. It's not many phone calls, but one phone call is too many that way. And that's our focus there. What are we going to do to get better? We need to make sure, as I said to all of our principals, when we take a look at some of these test scores, the first thing I do when I walk into any classroom is I don't focus on the teacher, I focus on what the students are doing and what they're saying, because that matters the most. Students need to be engaged in tasks that are commensurate with the expectations. What I'm about to say is just like a hypothetical. It's hyperbole, it's not here. So if I walked into a high school classroom and kids were working on a collage, I would probably grab Dr. Tioni and bring her down there and talk about tasks versus expectations, right? Because that's the most important thing. What are students engaged in? Are they engaged in those activities and discussions that get them to think deeper, wider, to be critical thinkers, writers, speakers. And that only happens when you provide them with tasks that are at that level. And if you do that, then I think the state assessments can be that of a formality, right? And that gets back to your assessment question, which is always a question about assessment fatigue. And this is a tough one, and because you hear this all the time. It's a joke. We're giving you state assessment data. It's autopsy data. They've moved on. They're in 6th grade now. We're looking at 5th grade. The kids are in the high school now. They've moved on. So how are we responding in a way that makes us nimble, right? In our local assessment plan, are we doing diagnostics and types of benchmarks to assess it all the way? We go to a doctor. The doctor takes my blood pressure, does this, says, okay, this is what you need. They talk about an intervention, right? They talk about like frequency and duration, right? How much, how long? And then I come back and they're like, you're getting better, less, or you're getting worse, right? That allows us to make those changes before the end of the year, so we're not, at this point, having conversations about, hey, we didn't see this coming, so now we're gonna like re-up it, right? So that's my long-winded way of saying that, you know, I can look at it a couple ways, and at the end of the day, we have really high expectations, and we need to do a better job, and that starts with me. Getting kids to a spot where we know that not only they are successful, but they will be the first choice for anybody looking. For a student in a post-secondary setting, at a trade school, for a job, doesn't matter. They have to be the first choice. So.
Mrs. Tierney.
I have a couple comments, but first, Dr. Schaefer, with what you just said, in all your assessments of being in all your classrooms and looking at what you just said about task-oriented curriculums, do you believe that your classrooms are asking students to have that task-oriented curriculum today?
I think we're well on our way, and it's I can give you examples of wow, I mean, they're exceeding expectations. And I can give you examples, not a whole lot, where I think that we could be more challenging that way. And this is when it falls on myself and Dr. Vitale, as we were here last week talking about the ongoing assessment program in OGAP. This is a very, what I would call like a cognitive-based professional learning. So I just talked to you about pushing kids and making sure they're engaging in a task that's commensurate with the objective. Well, we need to do the same thing for our teachers in professional learning. If I give you boilerplate, mediocre professional learning, then how do I ever expect you to get to a place where we're pushing the kids here? And we've heard from our teachers and our leaders, and Dr. Vitale stood up under her leadership talking about, hey, OGAP is making a difference because the teachers are in there doing the work and thinking about the thinking and thinking about, okay, what does this mean for me day to day in my instruction? Those instructional moves, what am I putting in front of the kids? How are the kids going to be interacting? What questions and probes might I ask them? What might they be asking themselves? One Book, One School is a great example of that, right? So it's just not writing, but now we're talking about it and people are providing their own examples, right? So how do we formalize learning? When we can write about our own experiences and when we can talk about it. And we saw a very powerful presentation with a young man who read and then told you in his own words why it was impactful. He didn't talk about the characters, he talked about himself in times where he made poor decisions or he was challenged, and then he was able to name those protective factors, some of the supports along the way that help him get to that point, right? And that's what high quality professional learning is all about. So, you know, I will push Dr. Vitale, I will push myself, I will push our leaders to be always looking for that, right? You know, folks may get, tired of me talking about professional services, but the reason why is because I'm always looking for the best thing for us, right? Can we put the best folks in front of our teachers to provide them with the best training to turn that back over to our kiddos?
And then my next comment was, I first want to thank the administrators for their presentations and speak on that exact topic of maybe the stress that teachers and students have been on for quite a while. But hearing that group of students in the 7th and 8th grade classes to talk the way they did about the book that they're reading, it takes all of those test scores and puts it in a totally different perspective. I really appreciated Mrs. Snyder speaking on how it didn't seem right, how hard her teachers are teaching, how hard her students, but these are numbers. And then Dr. Thione saying, but it's the next level of going into the high school and the strength that she's seeing with the high school students. So I have a couple questions about the high school student. I'm noticing the AP courses, the number of students, especially in Calc A and B. I've noticed from last year 53 students to the next year it's only 24. Are you noticing a change in the students that are interested in AP courses? Are you noticing a change in them inquiring about different AP courses?
No, I think that was an anomaly. Actually, if you want to go back to the data, I think the year that there was 2 AP classes, that's not standard. We did notice that coming out of COVID, there was an inflated sense of self from kids, like because there wasn't as much rigor. So a lot of them thought they were better math students, and they were like tracked up a little bit higher. So I think you're settled. That's a more typical number that you're seeing this year, and that was more like an anomaly or a bubble that we experienced in that.
I'd also say that, we have to evaluate every piece of data that we take. So I don't spend a lot of time looking at the number of tests because our enrollment fluctuates. So every now and then, we're going to graduate a class of 300 kids, but then we regress back to the mean, anywhere from 260 to 275. So in some cases, when we had that class of 320 or whatever it was, we saw numbers up in 512. What I take a look at is not only our percentage pass rate, and this was the second highest pass rate that we've had in over 7 years since we've been tracking it. Pennsylvania scores has a higher mean than what they call the global mean, which is the United States. And then we beat the Pennsylvania mean by a bit. I'm not running it through SPSS, but it's statistically significant when I take a look at it. And when we take a look at those numbers where you're seeing on average almost 8 in 10 kids that take it, passing that assessment in aggregate, that it just shows the strength of the program, which is good. And then finally with that, with Dr. Vitale, what we talked about this week is, and this will be published pretty soon, but a leading indicator of academic achievement and outcomes is rigorous courses of study, right? The level that you take in high school. And there's a calculation. That calculation is used by the Washington Post. It's used by U.S. News and World Report. It's kind of like a gold standard, right? This is what you look for, right? And our percentage of those graduates that would take a rigorous course of study is 91%. 93%. Right? It's off the charts. And in part, a lot of that is due to dual enrollment, right? Because there is an economic impact for our families moving forward post-high school with that. So.
And one more question with Dr. Thione. Are you getting any feedback on the pushback with your 9th period? Is that more successful?
Yes. I think that, habits are hard to break.
I commend you for making that change, and good luck with that.
Speaking to the, the reduced AP test taking, wasn't there some discussion a couple years ago about the fact that students and families are looking at the AP tests in a different light, given dual enrollment and articulation agreements, and saying that that is much more beneficial to them than perhaps an AP course?
Correct, yes. And,
So.
I'm attending a training, roundtable discussion on Monday with Mr. Smith regarding AP. And that's going to be one of the topics that they address, because with us offering college credits, a lot of times your post-secondary schools, they won't take the AP credit. They'd rather you earn the actual college credit, either with them or through some other institution. So we're finding that more of our students are opting for the dual enrollment options. But some of them still, I mean, obviously, you look at our numbers, we have 350 students still, 350 tests still being administered in May for our students, so that's still a large population. But there was a little bit of a swing there, and there's a lot of conversation related to it. Fees that have gone up for the AP tests, all things that are outside of our control. We're maintaining our offerings, our teachers are still filling the seats, it's still incredibly engaging curriculum for students that take it. But you can see there is a little bit of a fluctuation in numbers, but it could be due to bubble class sizes, like Dr. Schaefer indicated.
You know, Dr. Schaefer's probably going to stab me with his pen when I get done saying this, but this situation is a tough one for education, because you really want to teach those skills, as Dr. Schaefer was talking about, critical thinking and things like that. There is no test that really talks you through how to do critical thinking. So, but at the same time, we obviously have to compare where we are and how we're doing it against other peer groups, and of course the only way to do that is a test. But it really brings to the question in my mind, is it beneficial to some extent to teach to the test? I remember a number of years ago when we had this very similar discussion about test scores dropping, and there was a lot of pushback from the superintendent at the time saying, we really don't want to teach to the test because that may not be what our students really need. And going further back, I can remember a day going to a board meeting and asking a question about why Abington Heights only had, I think it was less than 10 AP tests. What I was told, the answer we got was, well, the Abington Heights courses are much more rigorous than AP. They don't need them. Well, that may have been the case, but we still need some measure of how we're doing. And so this is a very tough situation, but I think, again, we still have to keep focused on where we are and what the test scores are, and when they drop, why they drop, and what is the trend, why are we trending downward, and so on. And it could be a lot of factors.
Sorry, I know we've been going at this a while, but so kind of 2 points, I'll try to stitch them together, is one, when we talk about the percentiles, right, I think it gives us a benchmark to say, so the percentile range is normalizing for the things out of our control. I think COVID, impacts of social media, impacts of just this life, right? So I think that's something that we need to look at, is how do we trend with everybody else? And then the other thing I thought of, and maybe there's no answer today, but we should probably be thinking about it, is we've invested a lot of time in, say, OGAP or individualized education techniques where we're trying to intervene early when there's a problem, right? But if how do we measure the return on that investment, right? If we're saying that these tests don't do a great job and we're doing better at intervening, how do we know, right, how do we get to the point that we know that that was a worthwhile endeavor or that we're doing it correctly?
To Mr. Rosen's point, you have another assessment.
No.
No, well, no, and I don't think it's an assessment, but I am wondering, how do we know?
So there's actually, it's something called PVAS, and it's Pennsylvania Value Added Assessment System. And what it does is it takes all of our benchmark data and all of those standardized assessments, and it puts them in an algorithm that I will never, ever pretend to understand. And it tells you, it's a predictor tool of where students will perform with just tier 1 instruction. And then it gives you a growth rate and it gives you a growth score. And then it shows you after a year, how did that student perform? So we are looking, and it's like color-coded, we are looking for students to perform well above. And when we look at individual students, so if they've been, our students at the individual level, if they're at well above, that means that we've gone above and beyond and we've closed their achievement gap, or there wasn't an achievement gap and we've just grown them academically. So that PVOS score is really, really important to us at the student level, and then the classroom level, and then the grade level, for us to understand if these measures are in fact impactful above and beyond just our tier 1 instruction. Also not available yet.
Dr. Schaefer, you want to finish it out or not?
I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole that, like, I probably shouldn't.
No, you
Talking
shouldn't.
about logic models.
It's 7:44.
Efficacy. Yeah, we should stop.
Let's move on.
So can we just, I just want to thank Mrs. Snyder, her team, and then Dr. Tioni and her team for really spending the entire summer of pulling apart this data, trying to understand it, and making sure that we are focused on our students, focused on excellence, and giving everything that we can to ensure that students have the best possible experience and that they grow academically. So thank you for that energy.
Thank you very much. Dr. Schaefer, you want to take us through the
Yep, sure thing.
discussion item?
Yep, I'd ask Mr. Acker that the board consider a motion to approve the personnel report as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion?
I have a comment. Dr. Vitale. It has been our pleasure to have you here at Abington Heights, and it is going to be quite a loss to have you leave on us. But I wish you well. I know that this has been a goal for you, and I am so happy for you. But man, are you going to be missed here?
You know, we don't have to approve a resolution.
I'm voting.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's a very good point.
Yep, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to go line by line.
And
I echo
and
Mrs. Tierney.
I also want to give a shout out. Mrs. Rowe is a very dear friend of mine, and she's been an incredible English teacher at Abington Heights for years. And I just see her retirement here, and I wish her well.
Other comments?
Mrs. Tierney, we are certainly going to, big shoes to fill. It's been a pleasure working with you, especially on the curriculum committee meeting, and just, you're one of a kind. So it's definitely, I always say you're a special kind of unicorn. I'm still voting no, but, I applaud everything that you've done. You've worn many hats for many years, kind of jumped in wherever we needed you. I think most notably, when Mrs. Snyder was on maternity leave and you found yourself, new little office down at the middle school. I did think that just speaks to the depth of your dedication to our students, so you will be missed. Once again, I vote no. You barely have a pulse over
We'll
here,
give you,
so,
we'll give
I
you
mean-
that chance in a moment.
King of rules of order.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it, that's him.
I'm not going to speak for the whole board, but I think we all feel the same, Dr. Vitale. And, good luck.
Thank you.
Seriously. Roll call, please.
Before I do roll call, thank you. I appreciate it. It's truly been, not to be a cliche, but an honor and a pleasure to serve this board and this community. You welcomed me being an outsider, and I'm just incredibly grateful for the experience I have, and you allowing me to kind of let my leadership grow and allowing us to really do good work to make sure that we're focused on students and that excellence truly is our standard. So thank you, and I'm excited for what lies ahead for Abington Heights. And let's do a vote. Miss Henderson. That was a yes. Ms. Hillebrand.
Yes.
Ms. Karam.
Yes.
Mr. Moran.
Yes.
Mr. Robeson.
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney.
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah.
Yes.
Mr. Azar.
Yes.
Mr. Acker.
yes, but you ran through that awfully fast, like you wanted to get through it quickly.
I did.
Before we
but,
changed our minds.
I would say accolades make Dr. Vitale incredibly uncomfortable, so thank you so much. Moving on.
Shall we keep going?
Okay. Before the next one, I just want to give a brief note. We have 6 vehicles in our maintenance fleet. In some way, shape, or form, most of them need some attention. Our crew does a fantastic job keeping them afloat and in great shape. But when you're plowing through some tough terrain and putting down salt all the time, it takes a beating. We've got 3 dump trucks, 2 pickups, and a utility. This year, through our loan, we are replacing one of the dump trucks. It just has to happen. And our dump trucks last a long time. So, we're excited to get this dump truck because now, because of the way it's constructed, we'll be able to use it all year long versus what we had before. It was just the winter. And before you now, we've got an F-350 because our one right now, the mechanic won't even fix it just because he's a good guy. And he said, it's not worth it. You're going to pay more than what it's worth. And so we had this point where we need to take a look at updating our fleet. I've been talking with Jim, and we'll do this very methodically so they don't all come due at one time. And then right after this, we also have some equipment that was probably gifted to us by some wonderful people in the community 20 years ago, and it was probably being used for 20 years. So we've got some safety things that we need to do to make sure our maintenance team has safe equipment. So I'll be talking about scissor lifts at some point in the future. But for our purposes here today, Mr. Ackert, asks the board consider a motion to approve the purchase of a 2024 F-350.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call?
Ms. Hillebrand?
Yes.
Ms. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Ms. Henderson?
Yes.
And Mr. Acker?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 9-0.
Mr. Acker, asks the board consider a motion to approve the RFP for Abington Heights School District with Agency Construction Management, this is wrong, with our Construction Management Services RFP.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Mr. Azar?
Could you just talk for a minute about who is involved in writing the RFP?
Yep. So KCBA put the RFP together, and then I sent that off to Jeff Blake, our construction attorney. Sent it to Jim, and it's very boilerplate and kind of meets our expectations for that. And then we'll have the opportunity as we interview and decide to augment contracts in any way that we want to set out some outcomes relative to the project and expectations that we may have locally around that.
Thank you.
I have a question also on this. I just want to make sure, so you said, Mr. Mirabelli, the insurance requirements, do you feel comfortable with the liability limits?
I think given the size of the project and the liability that the construction manager may incur through, I think it's a good limit to assess on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Abdallah?
This is, I know it's in the paperwork for the public. This is just for the management of the middle school project, not all our projects.
Correct. Now, the board will certainly have the opportunity, if they want, as we start to roll some other projects through, to either put another RFP out or to extend or modify the agreement that we have with the current, whomever we hire.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
So just to follow up on the coverage, it's at a minimum of 3 million is what we're requesting in the RFP. Is that? And then we put in there too, the umbrella of 5 million on top of that.
I think it's 5.
5 and 3. Yeah.
Says minimum liability limit. Other questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Ms. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Ms. Henderson?
Yes.
Ms. Hillebrand?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 9-0.
Okay, the next is just a list of informational items. And do we have any unfinished business? New business? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you all.